that's 150 kilos. Yesterday I did the same with 170. And I'm less than 65 kilos body weight. Is that, look, if I can be better at 43 than I was at 18, and probably lean, I don't think I've ever been lean in my life, then what's going on? Maybe those principles just work in all of us. So just to reiterate, this is the stats again. And it sort of seems like I've sort of almost demonised exercise now, doesn't it? Which I usually get to this stage, but I still believe.
Demonise it all you
because like I say, I got these results by stopping, and only exercise. Actually, an hour is probably exaggerating too. So, don't worry, I'm not exercising, I'm fine, But no, it's vital, and I've sort of come around to that lately, actually. But it's like a double-edged sword. It's a blessing, it's a curse. I actually starting to see that it's not just something we should be messing around with, because it can be either one. So, to give you an example, what's a curse? Don't go and run ultra marathons and marathons. Okay.
Oh,
you happy with that?
Yeah. Okay.
Because remember, that's the reason I stopped. And Steve and Jeff, they tested those marathon runners, and they end up type 2 diabetics, some of them. I was slim, but I could see the same might happen to me, so that's why I stopped. So how do we get exercise to be a blessing? Well, I believe there's an answer, and it's called high intensity exercise. So what that is, it's short duration, where you pretty much burn sugar and your fat burning goes right down. So you go, well, hang on. What does that do? I want to burn fat. Just like you've seen now, how we make fat is not because of laziness, it's because of our body chemistry. That's what we've got to change. That's what we're trying to change here with exercise too. It's another stimulus to the body. Just like the food produces, just like carbohydrates makes your pancreas release insulin, intense exercise will do stuff in your body you wouldn't believe. Okay, but it's not about burning calories in the time you're actually exercising. Okay. Now I'm talking when I do this high intensity stuff, I work very hard for about 7 minutes.
Wow.
Now, mind you, I work hard for 7 minutes and then I got to lay down on the floor because my heart's going about at 180. But there's a way to do this safely. It's not about being a madman. It actually looks like watching grass grow when you watch me train. It's so slow and controlled. I'm going to give you an example of that. But anyway, to get the idea, you're putting a lot of pressure on your body in a short time. And obviously you're using your muscles, so that sugar, remember how that sugar storage we said that stays in the muscles, gets used in the muscles? That's what happens with intensity exercise. You're just lowering that. You'll never drain it, but you're going to lower it a little bit. So what that's going to do is actually going to help your insulin sensitivity. By you using that sugar out of your muscles, it's going to make it need and want to refill again. But can anybody think of why is there sort of an inbuilt mechanism in the body to refill those stores and quickly?
I just think it's survival, isn't it?
Yes. Why would you have actually the biggest sugar store we have in our muscles and a little bit in the liver? Probably about 1/4 in the liver and the rest in our muscles. So why would the body almost start to get drained of sugar and your muscles still not give it up for your brain? Why? It's because if you need to fight for your life, you need to use your muscles and you need to always have it there. Yeah, it's like you never take the spare tyre out of your car. Yeah, it's there for an emergency. You just don't mess around. So see how we've tapped into an evolutionary trait by lowering that emergency fuel, and body goes, well, this is it's just got to be there. It's just default equipment.
So what you're really saying, our body really hasn't changed for a long, long while.
No.
Except we're putting the wrong fuel in it.
We're exercising wrong. We're trying to do all these things wrong. And it's actually very simple. Again, you can read about, there's an anatomy book, fight or flight. You ever heard of that? Yeah. You can read about the whole process of what the body does when it's not a mystery. all the science is there. It's a bit like one of my favourite doctors I follow, Jason Fung. He does a lot with fasting. He's supervised like 30,000 fasts in Toronto. And now he's been asked to write a book about it. He says, well, and I'm doing that, but it's a bit like, how do you write a book about nothing? Which is fasting. How do you... of course, there's more to it, you know, but that's basically it. How do you sell fasting to somebody? Well, pay me to tell you not to eat. You know? So, but that's how the body works, and that's the stuff that works. So that's why, how we're tricking it with that. We're not tricking it, we're just tapping into how it works. And so if you go and do that, and you're a LCHF-er, if you're on the diet, and your body's working that way, and you go and have a short intensity workout, what will you burn for energy while the muscles are refilling with sugar? I've tried to sort of hint with that yellow colour there.
Fat, hopefully.
Ah! You get the grand prize. So let's say we end our exercise here, right there at that point, and this is time, and that could be, you know, the next 24 hours. Well, your body's going to take all the glucose it can, either from your diet, if you're not eating much, it's going to take it from your body via gluconeogenesis, and it's going to stick that into the muscles. But the body's still got to run in the meantime, hasn't it? So what's it going to use for energy? The fat. So can you see how you just turn on a huge fat switch by working out very hard for 10 minutes or less? We go back to our old friend, when we just talked about gluconeogenesis and glycerol. So is it possible that you could flick that fat switch by exercising? If you're drawing out energy from and the glycerol is making the glucose, but that also makes you break down more fat. So if you're on a low carb, high fat diet, and you've just drained your muscles a little bit of sugar, then they're going to refill whether you eat or not. So it's going to start making sugar. And if you're already a good fat burner, it's just going to burn more fat. Yeah? And that's where we come back, fatty acid metabolism. And we can even put one of my charts up and say, well, post-exercise it would sort of look like that. Because your blood sugar can't go too low, and your muscles need to refill. So that's why it's just drawing out those fat stores and making sugar from that. And in the meantime, your body's also needs energy to run. So you're just turning yourself in to really start to release this fat. But can you see how this is not happening in the gym? In the gym, we actually burnt sugar, didn't we? But this chart here, would you say it looks a bit similar to that one? Fasting? It does, doesn't it? Gluconeogenesis, filling up the sugar stores. So can you see how we're just working with the body, we're just understanding how it works. All this providing you maintain, you know, insulin sensitivity. But that sort of comes as part of the package, as you can see. You cut down the sugars, you cut down your insulin, you start to regain that sensitivity so you can control whatever blood sugar comes in your bloodstream. Okay, so what does high intensity exercise look like? That's 150 kilos. Yesterday I did the same with 170. And I'm less than 65 kilos body weight. Now, I was just saying to Mum and Dad yesterday, I don't think I could do that when I was 18. Now I'm almost 43. Now I know it's all different age, we're all different, and all you guys are older than me, but it's the principles I'm trying to get across. Is that, look, if I can be better at 43 than I was at 18, and probably lean, I don't think I've ever been this lean in my life, then what's going on? Maybe those principles just work in all of us. I haven't found anything that those basic principles of insulin, controlling our fat stores and so on, don't work in everybody. That doesn't change. Okay, so who's excited about heavy lifting like that? I thought that. So I made another video of another example of high intensity exercise. See how this one appeals to you. So it's actually the same principle. See how there's no really, I try not to lock out the joints. So it's one continuous tension on your body basically. That's high intensity, trust me. By doing that, I can get my heart rate to 180 if I keep going for about 3 or 4 minutes. Now does that look doable for most people? And that's a little bit technical, I suppose. But anybody ever heard of a plank? Yeah? You could do, that could be high intensity.
Yeah.
You hold that for long enough, done.
Okay.
Anybody ever heard of I just didn't have time yesterday to do any more examples. Like a wall chair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
You do that sucker.
That hurt.
The thing I just talked about with the glucose, that's only part of what happens. In a nutshell, if you push yourself to where you can't go anymore, whether you do it with a heavy lifting or you do it this way, your body starts to freak out because remember it's still primal and you're just putting pressure on it, you're just putting a stress on. Now if you can push yourself and hold that a bit more to where you actually can't hold that, then how your body interprets that is like, holy shit, you're just in life danger and I couldn't sustain the effort. Guess what it's going to do? It's going to get stronger for next time. But it's not about actually what you did at that point in time. It's about the stimulus and the message you sent your body. So what I'm starting to see now, yes, it's a little bit about that glucose thing, but it's exercise is just the signal you send to your body to tell it what composition you want it to be.
Olaf, what about if you've got a bad back? How would you do high intense exercise?
That exercise there, you don't have to do 150, right? You can just do whatever's... But that's the strongest range of motion. Like it's pretty much from above the knees, and it's the strongest part of that movement. That's a fairly safe, because even if you can't lift it well, and if you got up here, you can just see how it's safe. Like I can never ever drop it on myself.
Yeah. Yes.
But this is actually only one part of it. I do another workout. This is a little bit different to the real, what I call high intensity, because I do one I'm just going to use the machines, and I just go on 4 different machines, really slowly, just. Like I do a chest press, for instance, and that takes me about 1.5 minutes. I can't do that anymore. Then I go straight onto another machine, and then straight onto another machine, and straight onto the last one. But it's like really, as I said, it would look like grass growing. It'd be that exciting to watch me train. So does it really work? That's really what it comes down to. I can talk about it. I'm going to show you some nice videos. Well, let's see if we trial that. In me, for example. So, Exhibit A. There's a place in Adelaide you can get a body scan done. Anna, you had one done the other week. So, I started end of January. I went down and had a body scan. That's how I had those figures from, because I had a body scan done in Florida in 2013. That's how I got those numbers. So, this is when the numbers were pretty much the same as they were 2 years after I stopped running. Okay? But hang on, didn't I lose all this fat? Well, this is what we're going to get to. So that's if we compared to 2013. See, it's pretty much the same body fat wise anyway. I'd gained weight, but it looked like it was pretty much all muscle. And I say estimated here because they didn't actually give me a muscle mass. But by going by the numbers doing the same calculation, it looks like it was probably muscle mass. Okay? So in 27th of January, then I sort of got a bit more serious about the high intensity exercise. I had been doing some in those 2 years, but basically I stopped running and then I experimented with all sorts of stuff. Nothing was really consistent. And my weight just pretty much stayed the same, or my fat mass. Okay? So 2 months later, almost, in March, I had another one done, and that was my stats there. if we can compare them to January, that's what happened in less than 2 months. So my weight dropped, but it was pretty much all fat, 2.4 kilos, and my muscle mass went up. This is what I talked about. This is very, very hard to do. This is like the golden standard in the fitness industry. And I apologise for these pictures, but when I go and have a scan done, I go to my mate who's a photographer, and I have a photo session done there every month, just to try and document this whole journey. So in that period, I lost, weight 1.7, but the fat loss was 2.4, and I gained half a kilo of muscle. So you can see there's 100 grams missing there in the calculation, but that's where they say that's the accuracy of the machine. So that could be water, they don't know. But the reason I put the photos up was because I can't really see much difference. Can you? You could maybe argue, and this is, we leave these photos sort of untouched. We do the same corrections to them because you could definitely do something. So what I'm thinking happened is that most of that was internal. Because 2.5 kilos is a fair bit.
It's a lot of weight.
It's a lot of fat, Has to come from somewhere. So if you look at those stats, they're a little bit better than the other ones, right? Now, but they're still not the stats I showed you, because I did a talk in Mount Barker at Anytime Fitness back in April, and because I could feel things, there was something happening really quick, I went and did a body scan the day before, and that's where I got these numbers. And if we can compare those numbers to just 3 weeks before, that's what happened there. I dropped weight again, I dropped fat again, but I actually started to drop a little bit of muscle mass. Not much, but this is where our old friend gluconeogenesis comes in. See what the body will do? It will actually make glucose if it needs it from your muscle. So my body was starting to do that a little bit. Because, look, your fat tissue is just as important in your body as anything else. So what I'm thinking is that I've sort of said I have not been this lean ever, and it's now starting to get to a point where I can also tell if I don't eat enough fat, my ketones will go. My body will actually slow down. It doesn't want to give up any more fat, so it's starting to actually give up muscle. So I was actually adjusting this a little bit, and also I think when you sort of get to your perfect body composition, whatever that is for each of us, that's when the exercise becomes so vital. Because now, I was trying to see how I could explain it today, but it's, you really get your body working the way it should, and that's like a primal engine, I would call it. But it's also primed for primal living sort of thing. You need to do something with that energy it's releasing. And if you don't do that, I don't know what's going to... You're not going to function as well. Which I had been spaced my workouts a bit, and I wasn't quite feeling the same. But as soon as I went and had a workout, bang, my blood sugar came down again, my ketones went up. So it's a good thing, but then it becomes the closer, like Anthony was talking about, that's why it's a shame you had to leave. Because the closer you get to all that, it's all good, but it also becomes, you got to still be aware. You can't just, okay, now I got to my body composition I want. You're actually really tuning your body into what it was meant to be. So it's exciting, but I'm just starting to see that's why, I don't want to just demonise and say exercise because I stopped and lost all this weight. No, you just got to exercise in a different way. So that's the stats I showed you at the start. Okay, and that's how I did it. But can you see how it wasn't by running more, it's by running less and understanding how my body works? And really, it came down to understanding this. If we take a solar plant and then compare that to how electricity is made and then the end consumer, we can pretty much say, well, our food is really we're just harnessing energy from the sun. We eat the plants that harness the energy from the sun, or eat the animals that ate the plants that harness from the sun. So we're just really eating that sun energy. That's our food. But our metabolism how well our body works is actually whether energy comes out to the consumer in the end. This has to work, and this is influenced by this. But today we're so focused on the energy consumption to try and fix everything, but that's just the end consumer. But you can't reverse engineer. You can't just push this and say, well, we'll just pull more fat out of your fat cells because we'll just turn up the energy. That's not how it works. This determines, what you eat determines that, and that determines how much comes out of that. So we could even go further and say, well, that's your metabolism, say your insulin sensitivity. That determines what comes out here. And then your food, of course, is what you eat. Which a low-carb, high-fat diet seems to do fairly well. And we should also maybe call that real food. To leave you with all that, this is a quote I always read. But it sort of just sums up the focus. And it's a guy I often listen to on the podcast. He's an exercise physiologist. But he says, every 4 years we care about a 30-year-old who can run fast. But you want to set the news on fire. Be a 90-year-old who can get it out of your own way and still be standing upright and still not be drawing your words. People get really excited about that shit. Just super excited. That's true, isn't it? Which tells you the expectations of society are such that when you're young you should have function, and when you get older you should retire and do nothing. That's kind of this global expectation, and it's bollocks, it's bullshit. The idea is that a lot of people break themselves before they can experience all of that. Now I think especially this last one, that's what's happening.
Yes.
We're breaking ourselves because of the way we live. And you know what, the worst thing is we accepted that as normal. Right? We expect it. Right? We expect, well, I'm getting... It's a bit like a friend of mine said, somebody comes and say, oh, well, yeah, I have a bad knee, but, it's old age. Really? How old's your other knee?
That's a good one.
So, personally, I'm planning to be that 90-year-old who can run fast. And part of reaching that goal will be to maintain what Kevin stated after my VO2 max. It's got a perfect heart. I'd like to keep that. And I'm convinced that providing it with a fuel source of...
That?
Yep, fatty acids and ketones. It's going to get me 90% there. Okay, so 10%. We asked about the 10% at the start. The last 10% is probably the high intensity exercise. A few other little things. But the real question is, how do you want your heart to function at 90? That's the real question. Everybody uses this image though, so I'm going to use this one. How do you want your heart to function? Well, I would suggest that, low carb, high fat diet might be the go. If you don't like raw bones, you can buy some beef bakes at Govita Mount Barker, is what we sell them through. But also don't be afraid of the fat. It's the good guys. Do some high intensity exercise, either heavy lifting, heavy safe lifting, as you can see, or I call these Carlos push-ups because the guy named Carlos who taught me the handstand also taught me this one. Walking, just movement is important, and it's not about burning the calories. Forget it. You just got to eliminate that. But the signals you're sending with your activity, that's sort of sending messages, I need actually to be strong and fairly light because I'm moving. Now, this is only just breaking, this is my theory, but I've heard that from somebody else, and he says, I can't prove it, but what I've tried now, it seems to be the way it works. It's not, like I try to walk as much as I can, but I think it's this crazy idea about, we go and burn calories. It's so, I call it Stone Age science. It's worse than Stone Age science. And yet we're doing it, It's so freaking crazy when you look at how the body works. Try to minimize stress. We didn't even get to talk about that, but basically if you're stressed, flight and fight response again. We are primal. All that, so many things kick in where you're actually making glucose. Yep, and you're shutting down digestion, and you might even break down muscle to make glucose. All the things you don't want. Yeah. Once your glucose goes up, your insulin goes up. You stop yourself fat burning by being stressed. Yeah. Now, if you do want to take the next step, I'm going to put together a half-day workshop. Talk about maybe doing it here at Anna's. I worked out probably be about $110 per person. But yeah, pretty much cover all this, but it obviously much more systematic. How do you actually do this? You know, how do you actually apply all this stuff on a daily basis? We do some cooking. You know, when do you asked me about when do you take the ketones, when should you do it? You know, all costs money. You know, more about the metabolism. I'm in the process of making like a little handbook. We probably also video it, so you have it on, like today, you have it on video if you want to ever, you know, see it over and over. But just basically all the things you need. So if you're interested in that, just, you know, let me know. Grab my card here today or through Anna. And that's pretty much it. Check out my website. I know you're already done. I'm on Facebook. I post some stuff on there sometimes. And that's it.
Good on you.
Thanks,
That was
Ola.
really good.
No worries.
Good.
Nobody fell asleep, so that's all.
No.
That's
No, it's good.
Can I just ask a
Sure.
question about fasting?
yes.
Is there any benefit, say, in not eating breakfast and then, like, going for that length of time, say from dinner till lunch or something? Is that of any benefit, or should you always have your 3 meals and
No.
no?
I just don't get hungry until at least, 10 would be the earliest if
Yeah.
I've worked out. Otherwise, I sort of got to remind myself to eat after 11, 12, sometimes 1. But to answer your question, I played around. There's another guy I've listened to, but he says there's a normal sort of, you know, heard of the circadian rhythm, where, you know, your body changes just according to the hours of the day. And what he pretty much says, and I haven't really looked deep into this, but it sort of makes sense, is that we're most, your fat cells are most insulin sensitive in the morning, and your muscle cells are most resistant. And then as the day goes on, that changes, so that at night, your fat cells don't really want to suck in much energy, but your muscle cells do. So just by even eating the same, but eating it later in the day, you're going to favour more energy burning and go in the right places, and liver go into storage. Well, if we go back, you know, a million years, it would make sense that through the days when we probably hunting or whatever, so we're just expending energy, and that would make most sense. That's the time when we draw off our reserves, and at night when everything's calm and we sit around, then that's when we're fueling up for tomorrow. Yeah, because, you know, if you're exerting, if you're really, you say you're a caveman that's sprinting or whatever, your digestion shuts down. You get food in your stomach. It's not. Trust me, you know, when you run 85 kilometers with too much food, I get up like 4 hours beforehand and usually have my meal. I wouldn't eat right before, because guess what? As soon as I start running, my digestion is pretty much going to come to a halt. Yeah, and that's why now these fat adapted athletes that are coming out. I was telling you about this story, this study in the break in New York about these ultra athletes that can just burn fat off the charts. They can basically burn twice as much fat as they've ever been measured before, and they're doing it on no breakfast. You know, so yes, I think there's a real advantage to, because if you eat at night and then to the morning, well, you've already fasted. All right, that's the big that you've done that natural fast, and that's when you're actually in your best fat burning mode. right? The longer you can keep that going, the better.
Okay.
So yeah, sometimes my answers get a bit long. So but
No,
yeah.
no, that's good because when you look at all the people that put you on diet, the first thing they say is you've got to eat the 3 meal.
Yeah.
Like breakfast is the most important meal. You've got to eat the 3 meals and snack in between and all that. And then I just wondered whether you hear other people now, like with the 5-2 diet, for example, that say that you should do 2 days fasting and then 5 days.
See, this is the problem where
You get really confused.
I can see. Yeah. But this is because you're getting bits of information, and when somebody says you should eat 3 meals a day, they have no clue what we talk about here today.
Yeah.
Nada, right? So they're sort of coming at it from that old angle or whatever. They're not coming at it from this angle. This is the only angle. I mean, it's the only one that matches up with the anatomy books. And if it doesn't match up with that, in the end, I don't go by it. Because somebody says something, well, geez, you know, we all fart, but, you know, it doesn't matter. But once you get tuned in, okay, then it's about fine-tuning this. But the 5-2 is because there's benefits in... See, fasting is a whole different... I mean, we talk about that as well, you know. We could talk about... We could have done a whole talk today just on fasting, just on ketone metabolism, what that does. Because they're a big subject in itself. See, the reason that even they say, well, just eat whatever you want to eat in the other 5 days is because fasting in itself seems to be so powerful, right? It seems like it, and I have no doubt, I showed you that, well, I added high-intensity exercise in January and then it changed. I believe it was probably the end result of the last couple of years, and I might have fine-tuned it a bit. But it wasn't just that, oh, I just did that and then that happened. It doesn't quite work like that. Because there was only 2 options why I was holding on to that. Either because I could have been damaged from my long distance running, that could still be the case. And for some reason, I was still inflamed. And I don't know. And I'll never know because how do you measure that unless you go back? But the other reason, we were talking about this the other day, and I said, well, maybe... I was just holding on because I was running so much. Then my body was, well, if you're going to go and run about 100 kilometers, sometimes we're going to have that could be your life in danger. We're going to hold on to so much because that's worth it for your survival. Right? We don't care whether you have a 6-pack. We want you to be able to run those 100 k's if you have to. So maybe that was the signal I was sending with long distance running. Even though it's more efficient to be leaner as a runner. But see how we're primal? We can't get around the way the body works. Because now, I'm leaner, I'm lighter. I would come back a better runner today, I believe. With knowing see what I mean? Like, I've actually probably become a much better runner than I was when I was top of my game, which was really high. It's crazy, isn't it? If you're trying to, you know, control your body composition to where, well, I want to get as lean as I can and hold on as much muscle as I can, then distance running is probably sending the wrong signals to your body. I know talking about signals would be like, woo, that's airy-fairy. But I don't think so. Keep getting leaner, keep getting stronger, so I'm obviously not wasting... I'm going to go and have a body scan day after tomorrow.
But internally you wouldn't be suffering from the inflammation that occurred on a regular basis as a consequence of your running.
Exactly, and that's so what I'm thinking
you're
too.
in a better condition of health as a matter of course.
Yeah, we're built for survival, that's it. And we just got to understand that mechanism. But geez, I believe once we do, holy shit, you know, like... I don't know how long we can live, but... You know, part of getting older is doing damage. That's it.
Yeah.
That's why we get older. Now, we're never going to stop aging, but what about if we can slow it down a fair bit? There's no need for it to go...
Yeah.
And I'm just seeing this stuff happen, and I can only feel it myself, but just what I've seen, and then mum and dad, and
well, what your dad was saying,
just works.
giving up grain and feeling better.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't think just giving up that.
No, but this is pretty much that 3-day conference. I was on a sit with Dr. Perlmutter, and there's a guy called Alessandro Fasano. He pretty much is at the gut biome, and he's pretty much on about gluten. And I would just not ever think about touching gluten again. Most of the trouble is that the stuff we eat, and especially my gluten, it opens up the gut membrane and allows stuff into our body. And then we have this constant immune response. our immune system is set up to handle infectious disease. That's it. That's what we're built for. We weren't built to have our gut membrane permeable and all these foreign bodies come into the bloodstream. We don't know what we're doing with it. So that's the other side of putting on weight. What Dr. Perlmutter saw is that once you have this stuff come through and having a different environment in your gut, that can affect obesity and weight loss. And by changing just your gut environment, that, people lost weight and all this sort of stuff. So, but this is still the cornerstone, because pretty much if you eat this way, which is high fat and actually a lot of vegetables now, then you are, it's almost already going that way. And I asked him, what's changed in the 2.5 years since I saw you last? And he said, what's changed is that we need push more fibre. And that's what I said to him, well, it's funny, because that's the way I've naturally gravitated. I think I said, you eat no more protein, even less. Because I could eat a lot. Like you saw that raw meat, and I could eat a lot. I can't eat that amount of protein anymore. I think, why is that? Okay, I'm not training, or could there be other reasons? Even when I was training, I noticed it started to go down. I had to drop my eggs down a bit because I didn't favour that much protein. So could it be that I'm doing less damage, and therefore I don't need the extra building blocks? I think so. And now I'm hardly doing any damage, I mainly just want fat and vegetables. I can get away with very little protein. And I'm listening to other guys. There's a guy called Dominic D'Agostino in Florida, studies basically ketones. And he's a big guy, he's probably 120 kilos or something like that. And the little amount of protein he eats, he says, it's minuscule. He's never quite he does a lot of podcasts, but the most knowledgeable guy on pretty much on this whole subject.
But it's interesting in that Brain Drain book how it says how your brain reduces the fatter you get.
Yeah, well, that's that fuel partitioning we're talking about. But it's not just your brain, it's everything. Once we start to put on excess fat, that means we got a dysregulation in where the energy goes. So it's not actually, we're growing big and so, but we're actually shrinking. And it's just, and that's why it's so freaking crazy to go and hammer it out in the gym, because you're just doing more damage. You gotta fix it so that energy goes where it should go, and you only do that by regulating your diet and a few things. Just like we talked about gluconeogenesis. If you don't eat glucose and your body needs it, it'll damn well make it, right? So it'll do whatever it needs to do to keep you alive, and then it'll do whatever it needs to do with the signals you're sending it in the form of activity and food. It's all just signals more than this stupid idea of burn. I almost forgot about it now what it's called, calories in, calories out, whatever. It's just so far from basic anatomy. It just boggles I get frustrated about I was sitting there and I was sitting this morning, I was just going through the slides, and I just got to stop and go, it freaking boggles my mind. This is basic stuff I copied from my anatomy book written in 2000, And yet we've just gone down this track, but